Gonna make us some biscuits. You read in recipe books, you're fixing to make some bread at home and it'll say preheat your oven to 350 degrees. If you're cooking in cast iron outside in the coals, don't preheat it. You put that bread in there to rise, you done shocked them little fellers. They went to cooking. They ain't went to rising. Then you set them on coals. About 2 minutes in, you done burnt the bottom because it was 350 degrees to start with. Pre-warm cast. Don't preheat it. So we got our bread in here. We're going to let it rise till it's doubled in size. We got a fire source over there and a beagle. And we're going to reach in there and get us some coals. I do not use briquettes. They got so much foreign stuff in them anymore, you can't hardly get them to get hot enough to cook something. You have to refire an oven. You want to use coals? Get a hardwood lump mesquite or a hardwood lump oak. You can get them at a lot of outdoor places, Sam's, Costco's, places like that, but they'll burn just like wood because they are wood. The mistake that people make when they first start cooking in cast iron, they get them a shovel full of coals, lay them out there, set this oven right in it. Get them some more, put it on top, and then they tell theirself, when I'm in the house cooking bread, I cook them at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Well, first of all, look at this cast iron right here as I turn it round and round. Did anybody see it? It ain't got a knob. It ain't got a timer. And we done burnt that bread because we done got enough coals in there to launch this thing to the moon. Let's cook it right. In my country, the wind blow about 25, 30 miles an hour. I'm going to use a trivet. Tall or short, but I'm going to use one. And we got a lot of sand in our country. You set an oven down just on the legs, it's done sunk. You got setting right on the coals. So I'm going to put it on this trivet. I'm going to go over at old Bertha, that wood stove, and I'm going to reach in there and get me some coals. The shovel got a lot of holes in it. It's to sift the ash. Ash doesn't cook. All it does is insulate. So I'm going to put coals around the outside edge of this trivet. Then I'm going to load the top up. Then halfway through this cooking process, which is about 8 to 10 minutes, I'm going to get a good lid lifter. I'm going to rotate the lid one way. I'm going to rotate the Dutch oven the other. This way it evens out any hot spot that you might have with coals. Now we're cooking pretty even. But you tell yourself, hey, it ain't got a see-through bottom in it. How am I going to know when it's done? And they told me if I cooked with charcoal, I could put 6 under there and 12 on top, and it's 350 degrees, and I'd cook them 30 minutes. Charcoal sometimes don't last that long, and if the wind's blowing 45 miles an hour, it won't last half that long. But cast iron speaks languages. Everybody can understand. It speaks 4 words really well. Hot, heavy, burnt, and done. And there's a big difference between burnt and done. So we're going to look at it and check it. I tell the people at cooking school, we do twice a year. They've got bread on a trivet here. They've got another trivet here. They're going to check this bread. And what do? Lay it in the dirt. And Shan says, don't hit them yet. Let them give them another day. Because then they pick it up and they done dumped all that dirt right back down in the bottom of that oven. Right on top of them biscuits. Set it on a rock, set it on firewood, set it on something, but don't set it in the dirt. Anytime you're baking bread, pies, cakes, brownies, bread pudding, anything that you're going to bake like that, cast iron will tell you when it's getting done on the bottom because you'll see separation. Cornbread is the easiest thing to cook in the world in cast iron because when you look at it, it's beginning to pull from the sides. It's going to shrink. When it's doing that, you see separation. Let's take it off the bottom heat. Sure, I've cooked it to where it all comes out the same, top and bottom. It ain't going to happen often. But you got to remember, when we took this off them coals, this is not stainless steel. It ain't aluminum. It's hot. It's still cooking. It's holding heat. It's good cast iron. 95% of the time, the bottom's going to be just right. We can see the top. We know that it's all right. So we've cooked this bread. We didn't burn none of them. We eat them. Ovens cooled off. We've sat out there and visited with these people, and hey, them are the best biscuits we ever had in our life. Most time in a baked good like that, unless it's a cobbler or something, you can take a good rag, wipe them breadcrumbs right out of there. Are we through with it? No. I'm going to warm it back to that temperature. I'm going to re-season the inside of that oven and underneath that lid, same way. Wipe it down good. I'm through with it for the year. I ain't going to cook no more till next year, right? Wrong. If you're going to store it for an extended period of time and you're going to take cast iron and you're going to put it somewhere in the garage, slide it under the shelf and you're through, you've cooked trout in there last October. You ain't going to use it no more till April. And you go in there because you're going to go fishing come April again, and you take that lid off and you tell yourself, them trout lived in there all winter. I can smell them. They stink. We got to clean it proper always, but if you're going to store it for a long period of time, you take a good paper towel, you double him, triple him, whatever you want to do, put him in here, put the lid on him. He's got to have a wick so he can breathe. That's why I never did like to use lard. Sure, I used a lot of it for a lot of years because that's what I was taught. But if you didn't use your cast iron over and over and you let it set for a long period of time and you didn't store it proper, when you took this off, it smelled like somebody killed that hog in there. It'll get rancid real quick. I've never had that problem with olive oil when it's stored right. You live in a wet climate, you're going to store it minute rice in the bottom. Not a bunch, just some. It'll collect that moisture before anybody else does. So we know how to buy it. We know what to look for. We know how to clean it the first time, whether it's seasoned or it's not pre-seasoned. And if you can find a raw piece of cast iron now that doesn't have anything in the world but just cast on it, just old gray cast, silver, the seasoning process takes a little longer. It ain't a one-time deal. But like I told you, slipping it in that oven the way it is, you're going to have to do that time after time. And then you're going to cook bacon, fry potatoes, stuff like that, because cast really likes that. And you'll begin to develop that old seasoning, and you'll begin to get it slick enough you can slide an egg out of there. Never, when you're cooking, and you take a piece of cast iron and you've cooked something in it, and you think, hey, I burnt that cobbler beyond recognition. Look at it. I mean, I got to drinking beer I didn't aim to. Passed out there in the yard, the cobbler cooked for 5.5 hours. Sugar turns to carbon when it burns. Carbon sticks to cast iron better than IRS sticks to your check. So you tell yourself, I'm going to get a scraper and I'm going to scrape this out. So you go in the house and you get a metal spatula. Wrong. You don't put metal against metal in cast. First of all, I'll take this old what used to be left of a wagon bowl, cut it down to where it looks sort of like a spatula, and I'm going to get out of there what I can, wood against metal. Then I'm going to put me some hot water in there and I'm going to let it soak. Dump it out, see what I can get left. And I look at it and there's still some crust in there about this thick and that much on the bottom. And I'm thinking, I'm going to throw this away because you can't get it clean. I'm going to make a dog food bowl out of it. That's what I'm going to do. You take it, if it's got to that shape and you're about to give up, you take it and you build a fire, chunk it in there. Fire will burn that out. If it's a good piece of cast iron, it'll live through it. If it's a bad piece of cast, you didn't need it in the first place. If you've got old pieces that are antiques, Griswolds, Wagnerware, Wardware, something like that, and they're a little thin, I don't recommend that. Because it'll get so hot if you leave them in there long enough, it'll either warp it or crack some of it. So we got it in the fire, we got it out, but we lost every bit of seasoning that was once there. We have just cooked this cast back to its original state from the foundry. You got to start the seasoning process one more time, and we're going to let the train go by. There's a lot of good cast iron in that train. If somebody will wreck it, we'll cut it out of there and we won't have to listen to it go by no more, and I'll sell what we get half with you, I promise. So we know how to, we got the burnt cobbler out of there. We have to re-season it, start over just like it was if it's a brand new piece, never seen a piece of seasoning in its life.